Jordan gets paid on the 15th and the 30th, every month, without fail, for the past 9 years. Same company, 2 promotions, a decent 401k match, health insurance that actually covers things. By almost any conventional measure, Jordan is doing everything right. Stable job, responsible adult, the kind of financial life that looks, from the outside, like exactly what everyone is supposed to be working toward. And yet Jordan has less than $4,000 in savings, no investments outside the employer match, and a vague, formless sense that at some point, things will get more serious financially. That, at some point, has now lasted 9 years. Here's the uncomfortable question underneath Jordan's situation. What if the steady paycheck isn't just failing to build wealth? What if it's actively the reason wealth isn't being built? Not because stability is bad, it isn't, but because stability, specifically the predictable kind, quietly removes something that almost every wealth-building behavior actually depends on. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly which psychological blind spots a steady paycheck creates and why responsible and financially growing are not the same thing, even though they feel like they should be. Let's start with the concept underneath this. Most financial behavior, saving aggressively, cutting a specific expense, finally opening that investment account, doesn't happen because someone read the right article at the right time. It happens because of pressure, a financial pressure signal, something uncomfortable enough that the discomfort itself becomes the motivation to act. Job insecurity creates that signal. An unexpected expense creates that signal. A near miss, a scare, a moment of, I could have lost everything there. These are the events that actually move people to build real financial infrastructure. A steady paycheck, by design, removes the signal. That's literally what stable means: no pressure, no urgency, no near misses, which is wonderful for day-to-day peace of mind and quietly catastrophic for the specific behaviors that require discomfort to activate. So let's break down the specific ways this plays out. 5 blind spots. Notice how none of them require you to be doing anything obviously wrong. Blind spot 1. Absence of urgency. This is the most direct version of the problem. When your paycheck arrives reliably every 2 weeks, there's no natural moment that forces a financial reckoning. Compare this to someone with irregular income, a freelancer, a commission-based salesperson who is forced, by the unpredictability itself, to build a buffer, track cash flow closely, and think constantly about what happens in a bad month. Jordan has never had a bad month, which sounds like good luck, and in the short term, it is. But it also means Jordan has never once been forced to build the muscle that a bad month would have required. Blind spot 2. Comfort-based identity. Over years of stability, a subtle identity forms. I'm someone who doesn't need to worry about money. This feels like confidence. It's actually closer to a blind spot, wearing confidence as a disguise. The identity isn't, I have my finances handled. It's, I don't need to actively handle my finances because nothing bad has happened yet. Those are very different statements, but they produce identical behavior in the short term, which is exactly why the difference goes unnoticed for years. Blind spot 3. This is the one that surprises people most, because it sounds like the opposite of a problem. Skills stagnation. Financial skills negotiating, evaluating opportunity cost, understanding investment vehicles, reading a market are built through repeated decisions under some degree of stakes. A steady paycheck removes most of those decision points. Jordan hasn't negotiated a salary in years because the raises come on a predictable schedule. Jordan hasn't had to evaluate a risky opportunity because there's never been a reason to. The skills atrophy quietly, not because Jordan became less capable, but because the environment stopped requiring the capability at all. Now here's where it compounds, because blind spots, 1 through 3, build on each other in a specific direction. No urgency means no financial decisions get forced. No forced decisions means no skill-building repetitions happen. And the resulting comfort gets reinterpreted as competence, which makes the whole pattern feel like evidence that everything is fine, rather than evidence that nothing has been tested. Blind spot 4. Outsourcing responsibility to the system. Steady employment comes with automatic structures, automatic payroll, automatic tax withholding, an HR department that handles benefits, enrollment, an employer-selected 401k with employer-selected default funds. Every one of these is genuinely useful, but together, they create a subtle and dangerous feeling that financial management is happening on your behalf, by default, without you needing to actively participate. Jordan has never had to think hard about an investment allocation because the default option was pre-selected. Jordan has never had to think hard about tax strategy because payroll handles withholding automatically. The system is real, and it is helping, but it was never built to optimize Jordan's wealth. It was built to keep Jordan compliant and employed, which is a much lower bar. Blind spot 5. Delayed consequence blindness. This is the quiet one underneath everything else. Because a steady paycheck means bad financial habits don't produce visible consequences for years, sometimes decades, there's no feedback loop telling Jordan that anything needs to change. Someone living paycheck to paycheck on unstable income gets forced feedback, constantly bounced payments, uncomfortable calls, visible strain. Jordan gets none of that. The paycheck always clears. The bills always get paid. The absence of visible damage gets quietly mistaken for the absence of a problem, when it's actually just a very long fuse. Let's put Jordan next to a second, deliberately similar case, Priya, who we've talked about before in a different context, but here, let's focus on something specific about her early career. Priya had the exact same kind of steady paycheck Jordan has, working in a stable consulting role for her first several years. The difference wasn't her income, or her job security, or her risk tolerance. The difference was that Priya deliberately manufactured the pressure signal that her stable job wasn't naturally producing. She set a rule for herself early on. Treat 10% of every paycheck as if it didn't exist, the moment it landed, before it could ever feel available. She negotiated her salary every single review cycle, not because she needed the money urgently, but specifically to keep the negotiation skill from atrophying. She read one investment prospectus a quarter, not because she planned to trade actively, but to keep the evaluation muscle from going soft. None of this makes Jordan careless or lazy or somehow different in character from anyone watching this. Jordan is a case study in what happens to almost anyone when an environment stops generating the pressure that normally drives financial behavior. This is an environmental problem, not a character problem, and that distinction is genuinely useful because environments can be deliberately restructured. Character, if that were really the explanation, would be a much harder thing to fix. So here's what actually matters, whether your paycheck is steady, irregular, or something in between. Since a stable job removes the natural pressure signal, you have to manufacture a substitute one, deliberately, rather than waiting for your financial life to eventually generate its own urgency. First, create artificial urgency on a schedule, not a crisis. Set a recurring, non-negotiable moment quarterly works, well where you review your full financial picture in detail, net worth, allocations, spending patterns, whether your habits still match your actual goals. This isn't about manufacturing anxiety. It's about manufacturing the attention that a crisis would otherwise force, without needing an actual crisis to arrive first. Second, practice financial decisions at low stakes, deliberately, so the skill doesn't atrophy. Negotiate something small on purpose. Evaluate an investment you have no intention of making, just to keep the analytical muscle active. Read one piece of financial writing that requires actual thought, not just headlines, on a regular cadence. The goal isn't the specific decision, it's keeping the decision-making machinery from going quiet from disuse. Third, separate the system as handling it from, I understand what the system is doing. Look at your actual 401k allocation, not just the fact that contributions are happening automatically. Understand your actual tax situation, not just the fact that withholding happens correctly. Automatic doesn't mean optimized. Automatic just means default, and defaults are built for the average person, not specifically for you. Fourth, build your own feedback loop, since your paycheck won't build one for you. Track a number that would normally only move under financial pressure savings rate, net worth trajectory, investment contribution percentage, and review it often enough that changes register emotionally, the way a bounce payment would register for someone without your stability. If the number isn't moving the direction you want, treat that as the discomfort signal you're not otherwise getting. Fifth, and this ties everything together, treat stability as a foundation to build on, not a substitute for building. A steady paycheck is genuinely valuable. It's the platform that makes deliberate wealth building possible without the desperation that comes from real financial danger. But a platform is not the same thing as the structure built on top of it. Jordan has an excellent platform. Jordan just hasn't built anything on it yet, because nothing ever forced the construction to begin. Jordan's story isn't really about having a bad job or making bad decisions. It's about what happens, quietly, and by default, when an environment removes the exact pressure that normally drives financial growth, and nobody replaces that pressure with something deliberate. The good news is that manufacturing urgency doesn't require manufacturing a crisis. It just requires treating your financial attention as something you schedule on purpose, rather than something you wait to be forced into. You don't need instability to build wealth. You need to replace what instability would have forced you to do, and you can start doing that this week, on a completely stable paycheck, with absolutely nothing having gone wrong yet.